Welcome to another episode of Environmental Digest. Today, we are going to talk about the second most exploited natural resource on Earth, a material so common we totally overlook its crucial role, and the crisis that's brewing from our unbelievable demand for it: sand.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a question that might actually surprise you. I mean, if you had to guess what our most used resource is, after water, of course, what would you say? Maybe oil? Timber? Well, the answer is way more fundamental. It's something that is literally right under our feet. Yep, sand. It's kind of the unrecognized hero of our development, you know? It's the secret foundation of our entire modern civilization. We use it to make the concrete for our homes and hospitals, the glass in our phone screens and windows, and even the silicone chips that power our electronics. It's just everywhere. But because it's everywhere, we've been completely blind to a huge problem. Now, when we hear the word sand, most of us immediately picture these vast, endless deserts, right? But here's the thing, and this is the great paradox. Not all sand is created equal. In fact, most of the sand on Earth is completely useless for what we need it for. See, it all comes down to the shape of the little tiny grains. The sand we absolutely need for construction, the good stuff, it comes from rivers, coasts, and the seabed. Its grains are angular and rough, which lets them lock together and form really strong, stable concrete. Desert sand, though, it's been blasted by wind for millennia, which makes its grains all smooth and rounded. They're basically like tiny little marbles. They just slide right past each other and won't bind together at all. And if you want a real-world example of just how wild this is, look no further than Dubai. A city that sits in the middle of a massive desert had to import construction-grade sand from thousands of miles away in Australia just to build its tallest skyscrapers, like the Burj Khalifa. I mean, that one fact alone tells you just how absurd and how serious this whole situation really is. So let's look at how this one little paradox snowballs into a massive global issue. Our civilization's explosive growth, especially all the rapid urbanization happening across Asia and Africa, has created this relentless, just insatiable demand for this one very specific, very finite type of sand. The sheer scale of our consumption is, well, it's just staggering. Every single year, the world digs up a mind-boggling amount of sand and gravel. We're talking somewhere between 40 to 50 billion tons. That makes it the most extracted material on the entire planet. Yeah, even more than fossil fuels. And to bring that astronomical number down to something we can wrap our heads around, it averages out to about 18 kilograms. That's almost 40 pounds of sand for every single person on Earth. Every single day. And get this, that's enough sand every year to build a giant wall 27 meters high and 27 meters wide all the way around the planet. This isn't just a big number, it's a geological force. We're pulling sand out of the ground way faster than nature can possibly replace it, which, by the way, takes thousands of years. We are, quite simply, running out. Now, this massive, mostly unregulated extraction, it isn't happening in a vacuum. It's tearing ecosystems apart, it's threatening communities, and it's creating all these unforeseen dangers all across the globe. Essentially, when we dredge sand from rivers and coastlines, we're ripping out a fundamental piece of that ecosystem. This kicks erosion into overdrive, it causes riverbanks to collapse, and it shrinks these vital deltas that support agriculture for millions of people. And of course, it completely destroys habitats for countless species and makes coastal communities way more vulnerable to storm surges and tsunamis. This diagram here really shows how it works. You can see how these big dredgers just pull sand from the seabed offshore. And while that might seem far away, it actually changes the whole underwater landscape, which messes with wave patterns. It deepens the water, and that lets bigger, more destructive waves reach the shore, stripping away beaches and undermining our coastal defenses. It's just a vicious cycle of destruction. And look, these aren't just hypotheticals. These are documented realities. In Vietnam's Mekong Delta, all this sand mining is causing the delta to physically shrink. Over in Indonesia, entire islands, we're talking more than 24 of them, have just vanished since 2005. Research has even shown that sand mining along Sri Lanka's coast made the devastating impact of the 2004 tsunami so much worse. So, you know what happens when a resource becomes this valuable and this scarce, right? A dark and often violent illegal market is almost inevitable. And that's exactly what's happened here, giving rise to powerful criminal organizations. This quote here from filmmaker Dennis DeLestrac, who investigated this whole trade for his documentary Sand Wars, is pretty chilling. He found that in Morocco, criminal gangs will literally strip entire beaches bare, sometimes overnight, just to sell the sand on the black market for new tourist developments. And this is a global problem for sure. In India, illegal sand mining is considered the country's largest organized criminal activity. These sand mafias, as they're called, they operate with total impunity, bribing officials and using violence and even murder to silence anyone who dares get in their way, from police officers and journalists to local activists just trying to protect their communities. Okay, so the situation is definitely dire, but the story doesn't have to end here. Averting this crisis is possible, but it's going to require a fundamental shift in how we build our world and how we manage our resources. So what do we do? Well, the key really lies in a two-part approach: innovation and regulation. On the one hand, we need to drastically reduce our demand for new virgin sand. And on the other, we have to develop a global framework to responsibly manage the sand we do use. A huge part of the solution is shifting our mindset to a circular economy. Instead of constantly just extracting new materials from the earth, we can start turning our own waste streams into incredibly valuable resources. And this gives you an idea of the possibilities, which are actually pretty cool. Research shows that things like crushed-up waste glass, dust from quarrying, and recycled demolition materials can all work as effective replacements for sand and concrete. And these aren't just theories, they're viable, scalable solutions that can reduce the burden on our landfills and protect our natural ecosystems, all at the same time. Now, on a global level, the United Nations Environment Program has laid out a really clear roadmap. It starts with the first step, just formally recognizing sand as the strategic resource that it is, not just some common, cheap commodity. From there, we need to build that circular economy, enforce responsible sourcing standards to kill the illegal mining trade, and then begin the critical work of restoring the ecosystems we've already damaged. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, as Pascal Peduzzi from the UN puts it so simply, the illusion that we have infinite sand is over. We have to start acting like it's the finite and precious resource it truly is. Think about it. Our entire world is built on sand. But for decades, we've been treating this unrecognized hero of our development like it's just, well, like it's dirt. The challenge now is to completely change our perspective, to see the value not just in a grain of sand itself, but in the beaches, the rivers, and the ecosystems that it sustains. The real question is, can we make that shift before it's too late?